Hey guys, Coach Keith Keppner here. I spent some time putting together this flow chart showing you how engagements and fights can go on to help you break down and bring clarity and simplicity to the battlefield. In the fog of war, it feels like an infinite number of things can happen, and that's where it's important to break things down to their most consequential pieces so you can understand the map of boxing. By the way, my name is Coach Keith Keppner. Why should you listen to me? I've been a professional and amateur boxing coach for 15 plus years. I was mentored as a coach and as a fighter by my father, Doc Keppner, who's a professional boxing coach for multiple decades. And he was mentored as a coach and as a fighter by Chuck Bodak. And Bodak worked with over 50 world champions, and he was the Olympic coach for Muhammad Ali. Now, with this, it's important to remember that it can seem basic, but the beauty is in the basics. Never neglect the basics. And when you neglect the basics, you might get away with it for a little bit until it bites you at that clutch moment, at that moment that you've worked so hard for. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I left that out. I left that piece open. There was a gap. There was a chink in the armor. And that's where the arrow came through and killed you. So you must, no matter what level you are, beginner, this helps break it down for you. Intermediate, very important to keep this in mind, to keep this solid and strong as your base. And if you're advanced, it's important to revisit this back. And I feel like visual demonstrations like this are very helpful to get to the conceptual ideas, because when you're, again, in a ever-changing form of combat, like how boxing can be in a ring that's operating in a three-dimensional world, then it's important to just bring it down to a piece of paper like this. That's like a map, and we can really structure how we're going to attack. By the way, if you want to work with me, doesn't matter where you're on the world, and it doesn't matter what level you are, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, I have the elite level program on Patreon. Go there, and I will structure out workouts precisely for you to help you build up your technique, your foundation, your strategy, and everything else. Very beneficial. Also, if you want to turn your passion into your profession, whether it's becoming, being able to make a living as a boxing coach, or opening up your own gym, or scaling your gym to the next level. I've helped many people do that over the years and generate multiple six figures. All right. So 2 things to check out. If you're interested in that, go on Instagram, message me there, or hop on Patreon. And if you can message me there as well. Last thing, there's a link down there, a form link, because what I'm doing is collecting information and data on people that watch this channel so I can build out more things that are targeted directly for you and laser focused to help you get to the next level, no matter if you're someone that ends up working with me or not, right? Just building this YouTube community and making sure that I leave this world better than I found it. All right, now let's get into it. Starting off first with 6 basic attacks. So you got the jab, you have the other lead, a different type of lead besides the jab. You have a counter, you have your feet, you have a feint, and a bait. Some of these cross over to each other a little bit, but I did my best to make sure I didn't add junk in the system, and I solidified it into what I feel are the simplest but most consequential ways that the attack happens in the field of boxing. Now, let's start off first with the jab, and let's run down so you get a feel for how this whole structure works. First off, you do a jab. Could be a single jab or multi-jab. Doesn't matter. And remember, I've heard everything. I've heard people say don't start with a jab because people know it and they'll counter. I've heard people say, well, you can do a single jab, but you don't do a double jab because double jabs by good enough fighters get counter. And I've heard people say just everything in between. Don't jab, whatever. There's a time and place sometimes almost for anything, but it's very important to jab. Whether you do a single jab, a double jab, a triple jab, a feint and a jab different places. There's so many options for it. Do not neglect. It is a dangerous thing when you as a fighter start to neglect your jab, and that's why at every single level, people will talk about it, even the best in the history of boxing. And if it's good enough for the best in the history of boxing, it's good enough for you too. All right? Now, so you do your jab. Go down here. After you do your jab, then you do a combination. You put your punches together. Great work. Head and the body together, right? Mixing uppercuts, straights, hooks, everything. Then we go down here. Maybe, perhaps, they punch off of that. They start punching on you. Then from there, perhaps you counter those punches. That would be a great thing to do. And then from down here, we go down to the bottom, you exit, and then the whole sequence restarts and we go back to 0. We go back to one of these 6 options. Let's go down another pathway. You shoot a jab. Let's go off all the way over here. You go down here, here, all the way down to the bottom. You exit or they exit and everything restarts again. See that? So you shoot a jab and then that results with you exiting. You shoot a jab or they exit. You got to restart back at the top with one of the 6. All right, now perhaps you shoot a jab, then off of your jab, they punch, then you counter that shot. And then that can run you off down to this, just them exiting and you exiting, or it can run you down to they start punching, or maybe you keep punching after your counter. Very good and very important not to pot shot. What does pot shot mean? It means throwing one shot at a time. Oftentimes that means countering one shot at a time. That can be good, but a lot of the times I will see this where one of my boxers will counter with one shot, and they'll miss the counter. But if they put 2 together, they land the next one. Or they put 3 together, they land the next 2. Very important. If you feel like your counter game is not what it could be, obviously timing is important, defense is important, all those things, composure, knowing what to counter with, all that stuff's very important. But, very big but right here, if you're countering and it's not working, it might be because you're just countering with one punch. Counter with 2 punches, 3 punches, and you'll be amazed how that counter punch that they were ready for you to counter with might not land, but the next one they weren't ready for. And one of the most beautiful counters you can ever do is what? The most important punch of boxing, which is the jab. Now, let's run up to other lead. Very important to mix up our leads. Like I talked about, it's not always a good idea to jab, but most of the time it's a good idea to jab. 8% of the time it's good to jab. For instance, this one guy that I work with, he had to fight last weekend. He lives in another country. I work with him remotely on the elite level program. And he sent me the film of his whole fight, went through it, studied it. And he was jabbing, multi-jabbing, single jabbing, everything. This dude's face off over 2 rounds. And then the third round is an amateur fight. The third round goes out there, the guy I work with, lead right hand, bam, cracks the guy. Why? Because the guy I work with set the stage of doing a bunch of jabs. So, and they were working, they were connecting, they were scoring, and they were controlling the action. But the guy wasn't going to expect him to just come out with a lead right hand, and that's what made it work. Versus if you're just that guy that comes out with lead right hands, you're asking for trouble, because a good enough fighter, most good fighters, most decent fighters can see that, can counter that, and if it is what you always do or do what you do too often, it is a more dangerous punch to throw. The jab is technically the safest punch to throw. It leaves you the least open. You have the most defensive options after that. And very important to keep that in mind. Now, you do a different lead. Again, let's go through maybe after that lead, you cut an angle, and then maybe they go into attack you, or maybe you just keep punching after that angle. Or maybe you cut that angle, and they just jump the hell out of there. That's a possibility. Or you exit, and then the whole sequence restarts again. See that? It all works together in the flow chart, and we're going to rock back up the top, loop all the way back. Right now, how about the counter? So, another way that the action can start. They lead on you. They shoot a jab, you counter that jab. They shoot a lead, whatever, you counter that. They come to you, right? They just walk to you. You essentially counter that. But typically, obviously, a counter is off of a punch. And like I said earlier, great to combo off of that. And then after your counter, maybe they punch, and then you counter the counter. Again, so important. So often, we'll get caught in a dance where you will counter somebody, and they will counter you, and then we'll stop, right? You want to make sure you counter the counter, the counter, the counter. Very important. Or I think like someone commented on one of the videos recently that I did, be first and third, right? That's a good one. That's one I think I heard one time a long time ago. And it sounds familiar. It sounds like I've heard it before. I haven't honestly said it before, but I love it. Feel free to comment below if you're the person that commented that one. Forgive me for not remembering who it was. But be first and be third. That's great advice, right? Instead of being first and be second, be first and third. So you counter the counter. All right, now, feet. So what does that mean? Feet means we might be setting up our attack with our feet. It might be cutting an angle to set up our attack. You just do an angle, right? You could do it off of a feint. That's a good time to do it, or do it off of a punch, but you could even just cut an angle. Or you could be cutting down the ring, right? Walking in. You know, I'd be lying to you if I told you you can never just walk somebody down. Sometimes you can. You can. Is it always the best thing to do? No. A lot of times the jab is a better thing to do, but it is important to be able to walk them down. I think of one instance, excuse me. But so my wife, when, you know, because she fought 22 fights and of a lot of different types of martial arts, including boxing, MMA, everything else. And she had 2 boxing fights with me. And we were sparring against this 16, 17-year-old kid, real strong kid, you know, as big as her. And every time my wife would jab, he would counter pretty effectively. And she was having trouble with it. She was having trouble timing the counter and defending the counter and setting things up in a fashion that her jab wasn't getting countered. So after a round or so of this, I told her, hey, just keep the hands up and walk them down. So she put her hands up, walked him down, because he's a strong kid. So the problem was she was shooting that jab and he was coming over with a hard right hand. And, it was shutting down her forward progression, but also, it wasn't good for her to get hit like that. So, hey, just put the hands up, walk the guy down, and start ripping. That's what she did. Start destroying this guy. And essentially, if it was a fight, it would have been like a TKO stoppage. So, again, sometimes we just walk people down. Sometimes we cut off the ring, and sometimes we move back in a fashion to bait them to come to us, and then off of those feet, maybe they punch and we counter, or maybe we just launch a combination. Again, when I say combo here, it could be a combo of jabs. It could be a combo start with a jab. Could be a combo start with anything, basically. All right? And then we can run down the different lines of what can happen. Then we have the feint and we have the bait. The feint and the bait and the feet, that's why they're the last three. They can kind of run together a little bit. Now, with the feint, typically you're going to be feinting a punch, but it could be feinting a footwork, some type of movement, or even a head movement. But a lot of times, even that, like feinting a head movement, is actually you almost feinting like you're about to throw a punch. That's how it's read by your opponent. So you have your feint. Then off of your feint, it typically, a great structure is off of your feint, then you throw a combination. Or off of your feint, we go down here, and you cut an angle, and then you throw a combination, right? Or you feint and maybe they punch and then you counter it, right? And that runs into the world of like, well, you kind of baited them, right? So you feinted a jab, they look to counter your jab, and then you counter that. So that runs into the realm of baiting, obviously. A little bit of, intertwined terms here. So then they counter, and it could be just they jump away from you and exit out and everything restarts, or maybe you exit. Then you bait them. You put yourself in a position where you're inviting a specific punch from them, or just a punch in general. But typically it's going to be a specific punch. By leaning forward a little bit with your head, depending on what the range is, you might be inviting an uppercut. You might be, if it's a little bit further out, you might be inviting a jab or a right hand. And then off of that, you are looking to counter. So they bite on the bait, and then from that, they punch, and then you counter, and we go on through this cycle here, down a few different possibilities. Or maybe you bait, and they just exit. Right? Or you exit, right? Maybe you didn't feel like you actually knew what the hell was going to come, and you're just like, damn, I need to get the hell out of here. So again, with all these opportunities, it all ends up back here where there's an exit or they exit. And that exit might be the end of the round, right? Let's talk about the most basic boxing. But again, the beauty's in the basics. Do not neglect the basics. You shoot the jab. You shoot a lot of jabs. Like watch my whole video on the multi-jab strategy. You shoot a bunch of jabs. We go down here. You throw a combination. Then you keep punching and you're in great shape and you keep aggressing, and maybe at some points and times they throw some punches at you, but then you counter that. But we run down to this where at the end of the round, you exit, they exit, round is over, and we're going to go back to work the next time through. Now, do things actually play out like that? Not quite. But those are important macro concepts to understand. So often, guys will overcomplicate things to death. And just like any good technician or tactician, it's not about getting complicated. It's about how can we whittle it down to its most simplest components. If you're a mechanic working on a car, your ability to isolate it down to the most important components and the problem component is a representation of your effectiveness as a mechanic. And the less you can do that, the less you are effective and less quality you are. So you as a mechanic in the ring, and also you as a mechanic as a coach, the more you can take all of the complexity down and bring it down to its most consequential pieces, that is what effectiveness is all about. And then you can not have 1,000 points of light going in 1,000 different directions, but you can have that strong, piercing beam that just laser focused. And speaking of laser focused, click on that form below that I pinned at the top of the comments, because that's where you can give me your feedback of where you are with boxing, what you're looking to do with boxing, everything else. There's a lot of other questions there, and I may add to the forum over time and things like that, different questions to help solidify, who I'm helping with right here with these videos, and so I can also put more laser focused to help you with exactly what you're dealing with and help you get to the next level, no matter if you ever pay me $1, because it doesn't matter, because I want to make sure that I leave this world of YouTube boxing, but also leave this entire world and this planet better than I found it. Give the gifts that I was given from my father, that was the field of diamonds in my own backyard, and that I was so grateful to have, that a lot of people don't have that built into their own family. All right. And of course, my father is so grateful to have a great mentor like Chuck Bodak that shaped his life, brought him into boxing and fighting amateur, and gave him the courage in the discipline to get a PhD in neuroscience and become a clinical psychologist. And so it's phenomenal what boxing can do for people. All right, so click on that. Also watch out for the next video, guys, and hope you have an awesome day and have a great training session coming up.